Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. This is Monday, March 23rd, and we are here to give you an update from Westchester County as to where we are with the COVID-19 infection. We have a number of folks who are here who will have a chance to introduce and bring to the microphone, but we are here in our county office building on the 9th floor, but the press is connected to us technologically so that we have the opportunity to protect those members of the working press from the various different concerns that they would have of being outside and potentially impacted by this contagion. Our efforts are going to be to communicate with the people of Westchester County on a regular basis and to give you the details of what it is that's happening here in our home area. Each day, Governor Cuomo is giving an announcement, usually in the morning, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock time frame, and he'll go over some things that are statewide priorities. And this is obviously a national and an international crisis. However, there are local realities to this, and we want to make sure that we share those local realities with our neighbors and our friends here in Westchester County. It's important to note that this issue has really exploded in the last month, but the county government was not unaware of its concern. We all heard stories of what was happening in Wuhan City, China in January, and as early as January 31st, our health department issued an announcement about coronavirus. Dr. Charlita Amler, who is our Commissioner of Public Health, really highlighted what some of the concerns were, and we began the process of trying to mobilize as a county government and working with local governments to do that portion of this response, which is local. And it's important to understand there are certain things that have to be done by the federal government, certain things that are done by the state government, which has authority over the county and the municipal governments, but then also things that the county and the local governments have to do, and each of us have to play that part, and we have to play it cooperatively as best as possible. This is no time for partisanship, and this is no time for showboating. We all have to work together professionally and accomplish the mission. And the mission is singular. It's to save lives. This disease has taken lives in China, in South Korea, in Japan, in Italy, and it is now raging through Europe and is here in the United States of America. We have many priorities in this government, but the single most important priority is the protection of the life of the residents of this county and, of course, all of our residents in the United States of America. To that end, we began in February a series of actions, and we communicated with the public about those plans in mid-February and leading into March. It was only in the very end of February that the first hospitalization occurred in Westchester County, and that individual, who we call the index patient, around which the Rochelle area of contagion occurred, became identified as a COVID-19 patient right about March 1st. Today is March 23rd. There are only 22 days since that original first patient was identified. The statistics that we received from Governor Cuomo today indicated there were 2,894 positive cases of COVID-19, coronavirus, here in Westchester County. 2,894 on the 23rd of March. Our first patient was March 1st. This tells us how rapidly contagious this disease is. And so as we deal with rather radical actions, things that change our lives, completely change our lives, your life and my life as well, we understand why we're doing this. We're doing these things because this is rapidly moving, and it has shown already in places like Italy the potential of death that will follow it. So as we talk about some of these actions, it's important to understand that's the backdrop. The backdrop is that we are now in a period of time where the contagion is growing, and we have to do everything we can to slow that growth to the point where our hospitals and other actions will be taken that will help save lives. And all of that is the justification of the things we're going to talk about. What I want to highlight, we have a couple of people who are with us here today that will talk a little bit about a couple of the actions we've taken. I want to be able to highlight those. We've made the decision to end any fares on our Beeline bus system. They will not operate with a fare box, and they will operate now where individuals will enter the Beeline buses, wherever they may be in the county, through the rear door. Whether it's a smaller bus or an articulated bus, we do not want passengers to walk in the normal front entrance, or exit for that matter, in close proximity to the driver. We need the drivers to be safe and need to be healthy. We don't want them to be exposed to members of the public that might be positive for coronavirus, those who haven't been tested yet, don't know that they should quarantine, don't have symptoms yet. All of those are very realistic problems that can happen. And in order to keep our bus fleet drivers' safety, we now have this new policy. It's begun this morning and will continue on. We have that policy for two reasons, and I'm going to introduce two people to speak to you briefly. State Senator Shelley Mayer, who represents the 37th District, resident of Yonkers, represents a crescent along Yonkers and the east side of the county up to Bedford, highlighted this issue for us as a county government. and she brought along with her, the members of TWU Local 100, the union that represents the bus drivers. And we're joined here by Tony Utano, who is the president of TWU Local 100. I'd like Shelley and Tony both to say a few words so we understand why this particular action by county government is so important. First, Senator Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. This is just an example of what we need to do in the face of a crisis, is when someone like myself hears from my friends, Carlos Bernabal, who's head of the division of the drivers there at Liberty Lines, and Tony Utano, that there's an issue they want to bring to the county government. I was able to just make the connection and bring them to county government, and then George Latimer and his administration made this happen working with Liberty Lines. This is what we do in the face of an emergency. We step up, we share information, we make things happen. My congratulations to George and the county government, to Liberty Lines and TWU for working together and making a resolution that will work for the many thousands of working people who are required to work, who are still using our buses in Westchester. Those people, as well as the drivers, we need to protect them. We need to ensure they get to work safely. Their work as essential providers is so important. So this is an important development, and I want to thank everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you very much, Senator. And now for Tony Utano on behalf of the working men and women of TWU Local 100.
Thank you, George. I just want to say, first of all, I want to thank Shelley. I picks up the phone right away. I told her there was an issue. Carlos Bernabal was on me. I picked her up, picked up the phone. She called up George, and they stepped up to do this rear board boarding, which is very important. It's going to kind of keep the driver protected from catching anything. And our main goal is to make sure we move people to where they got to get to safely, but also we want to be protected too. And we think that this particular idea is being done down in the city. We just started it. Is going to help out. It'll help the bus operators, and it'll also protect the public. And again, I want to thank you both for stepping up and doing the right thing on behalf of TWU. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I want to thank Tony and the other individuals who are with us here on behalf of Local 100 and also Senator Mayer. I know they have other responsibilities, so I want to release them from their responsibilities to stand here with me.
Okay,
but thank you very much for joining us. Senator, thanks very much. This policy is just one of 1,000 policies that come out of the responsibilities of county government. We have had a number of other issues that I want to highlight with you very quickly. We have made available to New York State Department of Health the Westchester County Center. You heard the governor announce this a couple of days ago. And in that announcement, Westchester County Center, which has been the source for sporting events, for meetings, for exhibits, is now going to be the source for temporary hospital services, which along with the Javits Center and a number of other places that Governor Cuomo highlighted around the state, will be used as additional hospital beds for those people who will be suffering from the coronavirus. We know that we have hospitals across Westchester County that are preparing themselves for the surge. And the surge is the large increase in the number of very sick people that usually follows diagnosis of being infected. We've said, you've heard this said many times before, that 80% of all the people that test positive will effectively fight the virus off based on the strength of their own antibodies. That is generally, but not limited to, younger people and certainly healthier people in the later years of life. But for those who are older, those who are weaker, those who have some type of compromised immunity system, those particularly who have respiratory issues, COPD, asthma, perhaps a former smoker for a long period of time, they may be more vulnerable to the coronavirus. And so we're concerned about the surge, the need for hospital beds, and particularly for ICU hospital beds. The governor's already indicated that the estimate statewide is 110,000 hospital beds that may be needed, and he identified that the current inventory is at 53,000, and that ICU beds, the need could be anywhere from 18,000 to 37,000 ICU beds, and right now that the availability is 3,000. Here in Westchester County, we have percentages of those numbers, and we're going to try very hard to make sure that we can take care of every Westchester County resident. If we can do that efficiently within our existing structure, fine, but we know that this disease does not know jurisdictional boundaries and will cut across the dotted lines that separate us from other counties and from New York City. So making the county center available, we think is an appropriate situation, just as we made the Glen Island parking lot available for the mobile testing site that opened up a week ago last Friday and has been very involved in the number of tests we've been able to do in Westchester County. Members of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, along with members of the State Health Department, are at the County Center. The County Center is closed to any public access for any purpose whatsoever. It is completely now under the control of the Health Department as it becomes fitted appropriately for temporary hospital services. We hope we won't have to use it for that purpose, but we're prepared to do that. For many people who have written us and spoken to us about other possible sites, we have made available to the state a number of different sites in Westchester County that are either vacant or potentially usable for state purposes. The state will make the decisions as to whether any of those other sites are possibilities for it. We've identified the large parking lots that the county owns at the FDR site in Yorktown or a Playland parking lot in Rye as possible sites for one or more activities. But the state will make those decisions, and we will work with implementing those decisions. And that is the practical example of state and county cooperation on these things. Perhaps the largest non-health issue that relates to this is the impact that the closing of businesses cause on our economy. The governor has, over the course of the last week, with a variety of executive orders, closed down a number of businesses, not all commercial businesses, but certainly all restaurants, bars, health clubs, gymnasiums, bowling alleys, and then more recently beauty shops, nail salons, barber shops, all of those types of businesses, because they are places where people congregate and generally can congregate in close quarters. And so the mission of trying to reduce the amount of spread of the contagion comes from reducing the amount of places where we will come in close contact with each other. These decisions are necessary to stop the spread of COVID-19. On the other hand, they are absolutely devastating to the small business men and women who run these businesses and to the workforce of these businesses, people who are hourly wage individuals who work in a nail salon, who work in a restaurant or a bar, work off of tips and a small hourly wage, and now have no job whatsoever. It is important to note that restaurants are still open for takeout food and for delivery, but that's still a fraction of the revenues that these businesses have. The hospitality industry, the hotels of our county and elsewhere have crashed in terms of their ability to accommodate people. The traveling public has stopped traveling. That is a healthcare necessity, but it creates an economic development nightmare. And in the process of that, we've tasked Bridget Gibbons, who is our Director of Economic Development, to work in trying to collate whatever information we can that would be helpful to small businesses. We have Sherry Asher on our team, who works directly with the local chambers of commerce, and she is keeping a pipeline of information open to those groups. But I wanted to ask Bridget just to say a few words here so that people understand that we are completely mindful of the economic disaster that this creates for individuals and for small business owners, large businesses as well, but certainly the small businesses are much less able to handle it. And Bridget is in the process of trying to pull together as much of a county response as we can. Bridget Gibbons.
Thank you, County Executive. From an economic development standpoint, we really have kicked into providing a source of communication to our businesses across the county. We've established a dedicated website page to provide the latest information from Westchester County, New York State, and the federal government news and resources. That is at westchestercatalyst.com/coronavirus-updates. So we are providing information up there regarding, for example, small business loans that are available, quick loans that you can get from Community Capital at Community Capital NY, and also grants for nonprofits. They were express loans. And we're also providing information about from New York State about paid family leave, paid sick leave, and other resources that small businesses can tap into. In addition, we're sending out daily, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, emails to our email list regarding updated information. For example, when we received the information from the state about what was considered clarification and guidance on what was considered an essential business, we sent that out in a blast email. If you're interested in receiving those emails from us, go to westchestercatalyst.com and click on subscribe. We are also going to be having a Facebook Live stream on Wednesday. More information will be available about that as soon as it is nailed down. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And if you want to reach out to Bridget, you can reach her or any of us on our executive team at 995-2900. You can email her at bgibbons, Gibbons, at westchestergov.com, and you can find this information on our website. A number of other things to mention in terms of where we are. We have established over the course of the last number of weeks a hotline, for those individuals who call with questions about coronavirus. Now, this is the general hotline. In an average day, we get anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 calls. There is a delay on the hotline, as you might imagine. The demand for people calling at the same time is tremendous. We have almost 1 million people that live in this county, and almost all of us are transfixed by this issue and also how it affects us individually. And so we're all concerned and in great earnest about our own personal health, the health of our loved ones. But the 211 hotline is available. You can reach that, and you will find people who can speak both English and Spanish and be able to communicate with you. Now, there are additional hotlines. The state has set up a hotline. We've had some targeted hotlines to deal with specific groups of people. If you want to get more information about those types of things for people who have waiting their test results and so forth, you can call 211. They will redirect you to a different hotline. We do ask you to be patient. What we've also done is established an email address because the hotline does tend to take some time. So we invite you to email questions or concerns to COVID-19 FAQ, COVID, the numbers 19, and then FAQ, frequently asked questions, COVID-19 FAQ at westchestergov.com. And those emails will be reviewed and answers hopefully will follow, which will give you a sense of connection. This is a very dynamic environment. Things are changing every day, and we find ourselves constantly trying to keep up in touch with what's happening. To give you some of the numbers as we have them here today, you heard the governor earlier today indicate there were 20,875 positive cases in New York State. Here in Westchester County, the figure that was given today is 2,894. I mentioned that the first case that we had was barely 3 weeks ago, so we have gone from 1 to 2,894 cases. It is important to note that originally Westchester was the leader in New York State in the most number of cases. We had the identification of a hotspot, a number of folks in New Rochelle that were tested, giving some particularly high numbers in New Rochelle. The rest of the state, unfortunately, has started to catch up with us. New York City is well ahead of us with 12,305 cases. As you might imagine, Westchester is 1/8 the population of New York City. Nassau County is a larger county than we are, and their numbers of positive cases have come up to the level that we're at. And we're seeing it now in every corner of the state. The most rural, hard to find neighborhoods, hard to find communities are now finding that they have positive cases as well. This is a pandemic. This is in every corner of the world, every continent of the world. It is not going to jump by a small hamlet any more than it will a large city. But we do have and will release some numbers that give us status. Now, the numbers that we have today to share with you are based on the numbers as we had them on Friday. We've had so many new cases come in over the weekend, and individuals, once the announcement is made that they have tested positive, the individuals themselves must be informed of this before data is released. At that point, information is given to Westchester County's Emergency Operations Center Patrol Group, which will then serve to provide information to the fire departments, the emergency services departments as well in each locality. So before a firefighter or first responder, police are also tied into the system using a different mechanism. Before they respond, they will know that the home that they're going to has a person who has tested positive for coronavirus. And that's very important because there's special gear that a police officer, a firefighter, or an EMS worker has to have on if they do their job, but at the same time reach somebody who may test positive. And in order to do that, that information is conveyed from the state, inform the patient, and then downloaded to the state, to the county, in which we have them in various files that will then be pulled out by the various discipline. But because of federal HIPAA laws, this information is highly confidential. So we never release individual names and individual addresses to the general public. We will give you a general sense of the idea, and these statistics will be made available to the press as they see fit. In Westchester County, the number of cases as of Friday, verified cases, New Rochelle had 223, and that high number is spiked by the original grouping of what was tested that first week. Yonkers has 145 cases, Mount Vernon 70 cases, all positive, White Plains 54, the town of Greenburgh 43 cases, and that includes the villages of Greenburgh, Scarsdale 35 cases, Eastchester 31 cases, Portchester 28, Cortland 25, and the town of Mount Pleasant, 22 cases. Those are the top 10 jurisdictions in Westchester County. We believe that nearly every jurisdiction in Westchester has at least one positive case, and as you can imagine, the roll call that I've just listed in order represent pretty much the largest cities in the county and the largest towns in the county, and we will try to update that every time we have one of these formal updates. But we are lagging a couple of days behind the state numbers that are announced, and there are also a number of cases for which we have to verify location of address. For those of you who know the quirky world that Westchester is, you might have a Scarsdale post office, but live in the city of Yonkers or in the town of Greenburgh, in the town of Mamaroneck, or in the town of Eastchester. The zip codes do not correlate to the legal jurisdictions of towns and cities and villages, and so there's a certain sorting out process that has to happen. Westchester County parks are open. We have not closed our county parks. We have closed down children's playgrounds where they exist because it is impossible to constantly sanitize the playground equipment and make sure that no coronavirus is left on the surface for a little child to play on. But our general park system is open, and we encourage people who are not designated as being positive to go out while they're in circumstances and enjoy with proper social distancing the outdoor nature of our parks. Now, we've seen examples where there has not been social distancing. Over the weekend on Saturday, there was a large combination of people at Kensico Dam Plaza. I was there personally on Sunday, and that was a much more diffuse population. Signage is up now reminding people that the right practice behavior is to provide certain separation between you and the people you don't know. If you're there with your nuclear family, or you're having an outing with people who are in your close personal circle, that's one thing. But to be in a large grouping of people is very dangerous. And even if you don't suffer from the virus, you may have it, and you may transfer it to other people. And that could continue the spread, which is so deadly dangerous at this stage of the game. We have not closed our nature centers, and we have not closed our golf courses. And I know there's some folks who've said, well, why are we doing that? Because golf, when you play it, threesomes or foursomes, I don't play it particularly well myself, but for the threesomes or the foursomes that play golf, there is a natural separation. Each person follows their own ball, they play on the green and so forth. None of the communal congregate areas, the restaurants and the bars that go with the golf course are open for the normal 19th hole type of experience. So we think as long as the weather is good, and we had a little spate of good weather over the last few days, we don't know that that's going to continue, but golf will be available, and the outdoor facilities of Westchester County's 50-plus parks are open. We will make decisions sometime in the next month about the Playland season and the beach season. Playland is scheduled to open in the middle of May. The beaches generally open Memorial Day weekend. The public pools usually do not open until late in June, when normal school session is over. Those decisions have not yet been made. I will share those with you publicly far enough in advance to know, and it'll depend on where we are in this crisis as we reach that point. But those are decisions we will have to make. Westchester County was tasked before we initiated a school closing effort through the governor to make sure that we had in place an adequate system of childcare tied to the schools that would particularly benefit those children whose parents are emergency services workers, first responders, and also healthcare workers. And in working with each of the different school districts in Westchester County, all of which are closed now. Initially, the closing was a part of the New Rochelle district and the Tuckahoe district within the containment zone that was created in New Rochelle. Now all schools are closed, and we expect they're going to be closed certainly through the end of this month and most assuredly through the month of April. The decision has not formally been made, but it's hard to imagine, given where we are, we're still on the front end of the bell curve of the contagion, that schools were likely to be open. Joan McDonald, our Director of Operations, Emily Saltzman, our Deputy Director of Operations, have been working with each of the school districts to try to work through a program for that aid. And it is very difficult for us to be able to work through a service that is not normally provided at the school setting and not normally provided by people who provide it. So I want to thank all of the different school districts, the various superintendents who have worked cooperatively with us. We've done this under the gun of fast time frame. The state has been very insistent to make sure these things were in place, and I think that Joan and Emily and their team and working with the people in the school districts have done a very good job of doing that available. It is not available to all parents because we're trying to make sure that the parents whose work is desperately needed in fighting this contagion are the ones that are made available. We understand that's a hardship for people, for those who are working families and still have to worry about child care. We are working with the Child Care Council. Kathy Hallis and her people have been very helpful as we try to work through to come up with strategies to deal with the people who don't fall into that category, and also to deal with the parents of children who are under the age, school age of kindergarten and below, because that is also a child care responsibility. It is not a perfect system as we talk about it today on Monday, March 23rd. We're working every day to try to improve it. And I know that this morning we had further conversation on that point for some of the river towns and other parts of the county where work has to be done. But I have great confidence in Joan McDonald and her team that we'll continue to make progress on this. And again, I want to thank the superintendents, Joe Ricker from White Plains, Ray Sanchez from Ossining, and a number of others have worked with us very closely on that. They've also worked closely with us on food distribution plans. When we close the school district, we then eliminate, or would have eliminated, the lunch program that exists for needy children. And through the efforts of the school district, which do normally provide that service, they have been able to reestablish that service for those, and that's from K to 12, not just elementary school, so that a nutritious school lunch would be provided for those in need, and that has been happening. Westchester Department of Social Services has a wide range of issues that have gone into effect because they deal in general with the neediest populations, the homeless populations, and a host of other different issues. And that is one of the departments that we have in county government that is most interactive with the public. People are constantly interacting in person with the various DSS district offices. These district offices will remain open for emergency walk-in assistance using the appropriate social distancing. But Westchester County, as all businesses by state law, have been asked to reduce our workforce as close to zero as is possible. We're operating with split shifts and rotations that allow us to work with the least amount of people to come out of their home and come to work every day. The county DSS has done a number of different things using technology, developing an in-office emergency assistance options, using very specially developed protocols for child welfare and adult protective services, and that's important because those are usually in the field investigative actions, to utilize waivers wherever we have non-essential regulatory requirements. There are a lot of regulations that apply to the DSS programs, and in this case, we don't have the workforce to be able to implement all of those regulations, and so we're trying to use waivers where it's appropriate. Trying to support various requests and deliveries by phone or online rather than in person. And of course, they've been very helpful to us in staffing child support issues, child care issues rather, I'm sorry. And that is a very important issue. We have made a general call as a county government, for whatever it's worth. I think we were the first of the jurisdictions to do this. Everybody else has done the same as well. But calling all nurses, calling all physician assistants, calling all doctors, calling all technicians. We have a need with the surge that's coming, the surge again being the additional number of patients over and above a normal number of patients that will hit our hospitals who have this respiratory disease. We need an increasing number of doctors, nurses, physician assistants, and others to help us deliver that healthcare service that we need. So we repeat the call every chance we can. If you are a nurse, whether you've let your license lapse or not, but you're properly trained, if you're a medical doctor who's gone into retirement, or you have any of these particular skills, we need those skills, and we need them very soon. We would like you to contact us. We have Lindsay Jackson, who works in our County Department of Public Works. She's also a Rye-Town councilwoman as well. If you can reach out to her at lajc@westchestergov.com and register your interest. Now, we understand for those of a certain age, I myself am a senior citizen. If you're of a certain age and you're concerned about your vulnerability, we'll do our very best to try to position you into a job that does not put you in direct patient contact. But we will need nurses and doctors to do things outside of direct patient contact, and that will free up some other medical professionals to have that direct patient contact as these things happen. So it's very, very important. Jim Masano is the director of our Office of Consumer Protection, and he is doing a terrific job on a host of different issues. And right now, there are a number of scams that are out there. They're telemarketing and perhaps some through the mail that are trying to reach people at this most vulnerable moment where we're all concerned about our health and the health of our loved ones, and trying to get people to spend money, to give up data information that will allow the scammer to get money. If you believe that you have been approached for some type of unscrupulous purpose, we want you to report that to our Department of Consumer Protection. We'll give you the general office number of 995-2000. That's Westchester County's general number. Ask for the Office of Consumer Protection. Jim Masano or his team would be happy to help you, and they'll try to research out any of these situations. It's very important that we try to remember that when people are at their most physical vulnerability, they're at their greatest emotional vulnerability. The fear that all of us have of being ill, the fear that we have of dying is so great that we're more likely than not to be fooled into doing something out of desperation. Resist that urge. Make sure you check out any of these things that have been approached to you, particularly ones that ask for your money or your identification. And please call Jim Masano, 995-2000, and he will be helpful to you. Similarly, we have seen a certain amount of prejudicial behavior that comes out of this situation. I think anyone who is fair-minded and looks at the way this virus has gone across the planet, from China to South Korea to Japan to Italy, now in all parts of Europe, it's infected every country on this globe. There is no ethnic boundary, no demographic dotted line that represents this contagion. But because the popular perception of it beginning in Asia, in China, there have been anti-Chinese and anti-Asian behaviors out there. People have said and done things that are reprehensible, but they've done it out of anger. Maybe they've done it out of fear, or they've done it out of baseline prejudice. But there's no place for that. And being fearful is not an excuse for being prejudicial. So we have our Human Rights Commission. Tajesh Inchala is available, and his team, to work with anybody that feels that they have been prejudiced against because of their ethnicity. This is also true of anti-Semitic behavior and any negative behavior. It doesn't matter. The fact that I'm of Italian and Irish extraction, heritage, and this virus has gone through Italy shouldn't make anybody anti-Italian any more than you should be anti-Chinese or anti-Semitic or racist against any bloc of any American heritage that we share. And our Human Rights Commission will be there to deal with this as well. I have touched on a number of things. I probably missed a few things on this long list of things, but if I have, I apologize. We'll try to catch up with you tomorrow when we have the next session, and I'm going to stop my narrative and go to whatever questions we have. Now, the reporters who are linked into this broadcast, this is our first time doing this, and it comes off as a little minor league, but Catherine Chaffee and Carl Pagano have done their very best to give you this kind of a dialogue. They hopefully are sending questions in by email, and Catherine is going to relay them to me, and I'm going to try to answer them, hopefully quickly, and hopefully thoroughly and accurately. So we'll take whatever questions you have. And
the first question comes from Jonathan Gordon from News 12. Do you know of any problems with people who want to get tested and can't? What should they do?
I think there's a general concern right now. The question came from Jonathan Gordon of News 12 about people who are waiting to be tested or feel they need to be tested and have not gotten that opportunity. The most important step to do if you feel you need to be tested is to speak to your family doctor, the person that provides your primary care. Without going to the office, without going to an urgent care facility, without going to a hospital waiting room, if you are contagious and you go on your own, you run the risk of infecting people who are not prepared, whether they're medical professionals or just other patients, you will infect them. So call your family doctor and share with your doctor, with him or her, what your symptoms are, if you have symptoms or if you believe you've been exposed. It is your doctor that makes the first step in being able to authorize you for testing. And you should be aware of all the contacts you've had. Certainly if you've had contact with somebody that you know is tested positive, that is an additional step. Your doctor then will make the efforts to try to link you into the testing system. We have 3 ways to be tested right now in Westchester County. The way that we first began, and it was very thorough but very slow moving, we have teams of healthcare professionals, county Department of Health officials assisting a State Department of Health old nurses, in an in-home test situation. At best, we could do about 100 of those tests a day, and that was where we originally began our testing. The state opened up at Glen Island a week ago Friday, the mobile testing site, drive-through testing, people like to call it that. I think it makes it sound like it's a fast food establishment. But the mobile testing site in Glen Island has a much greater capacity, but you must have an appointment for that, and your doctor has to interact within the system to be able to accomplish that. And then also Westchester Medical Center has established a similar type of mobile testing center at their facility. They're open 9 to 5 during the week and Saturday and 9 to 2 on Sundays. In those cases, they are testing patients at Westchester Medical Center and those that are with doctors that are affiliated with Westchester Medical Center, but that is also helping us capture some of the backlog, and I suppose at some point in time they'll open up to the public as well. It is a difficult wait, but if you are asymptomatic, meaning you're not showing symptoms, then you will be at a lower priority than somebody who is showing symptoms, who has the dry cough, who has the sore throat, who's running the fever, which is probably the single most important indicator along with the other signs. And this is where our hotline information will be helpful, even though it's a long wait. And I think it's incumbent upon people to understand that we have a long line of people. We're trying our best. That you are identified as being positive puts you into an isolation situation. But if you suspect you're positive, self-quarantine. Take the initiative on your own, not to infect people that you don't have to come in contact with. If you can do that to protect your family, that's fine. If you can't do that, at least don't do it with your coworkers. Don't do it with people that you would casually know. The hope is that as our testing continues to move along, we'll start to catch up on the backlog. We've already tested more people in Westchester County per capita than any jurisdiction in New York State, more than have been tested in New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, or the other counties. The more you test, the more positives you find. The more you test, the more negatives you find. But keep in mind, if you've been tested and you have a negative, that's not a permanent negative. That means at the time of your test, you weren't exposed to the virus. You might be exposed to the virus subsequent to that test. So it is still important to practice social distancing and all of the good practices that you've heard about. And need I say again, hand washing and a host of other things. Next question, Catherine.
It's also from Jonathan Gordon. Do you have a more concrete timeline for when the county center could be turned into a makeshift hospital?
Well, we're working on the timeline for the county center being converted into a hospital. We're working on the state timeline. They have put members of their crew in as of today, Monday, to start the process of fitting the building out. I suspect it'll take at least a week to do that. Also, we haven't reached the point yet where the hospitals are at overflow capacity. That is what we fear from the surge. So I would say it'll probably take us, rough guess, 10 days to put the facility into the condition that it needs to be. I assume they'll have power needs that are greater than what we normally supply. I assume they'll have other needs that I would not be familiar with. But I would suspect sometime in the next 10 days the facility would be prepared to take on patients depending on how the State Department of Health arranges for that.
Okay, last question from Jonathan is, the state announced that it's sending thousands of pieces of medical equipment to Westchester. Where is that heading specifically?
Well, we don't know. Again, the state is in charge of testing. The state has taken responsibility for the additional healthcare facility that will be made up at the county center. I suspect if there's a bulk of things that are coming, it will most likely go to the county center, but we don't know that specifically. We're working with the state, and as I said earlier on, there is sort of it's not even triage, it's a 5-part breakdown of what the different levels of government need to do. The county level of government makes our county assets available. We work with the local governments on first responder responsibilities. So things like breaking up crowds at parks that would represent the lack of social distancing. That falls on the local governments and on the county government. And the things I've just talked about, what we do with the bus system, what we do with our parks, what we do with a variety of outreach and economic development, all of those would be our responsibilities. Most of the rest of these things fall to the state. And to the credit of the governor, and I might add Governor Murphy in New Jersey, Governor Lamont in Connecticut, Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania, they are trying to put together a regional response between multiple states. And that is sensible on every level of sensible because the problem does not know the jurisdictional borders. And so specifically, if there's medical equipment that's coming to Westchester, the state will determine where it's best used. They may determine that some of the individual hospitals need the equipment rather than the county center. And I'm confident that people who understand what to do professionally are going to make those professional decisions. We stand ready to implement.
Okay, then last question is from Mark Lingriello at the Journal News. He wants to know what precautions are being taken at the county jail to protect the inmates there and the officers there.
Well, the county jail, operated by Commissioner Joseph Spano and his two key deputies, First Deputy Commissioner Lou Molina and Deputy Commissioner Leo Diaz, have undertaken a review of every element of the county jail to try to make sure that there's as much safe passage as can be. First of all, there are no outside visitors allowed in the county jail at this point. And that can be difficult because you are dealing with lawyers that might come to represent clients, but since the judicial system is going through a pause as well, we think that will be less of that. In the health block, for those inmates who are ill, we have dedicated members of the correction officers who are there. They have masks and they have the necessary protection to deal with inmates on that basic level. Certainly if an inmate shows signs of COVID, we're going to take the inmate and treat him as we would anybody else. There'll be a testing component if they begin to show symptoms, and they'll be taken out of that setting and put into a secure medical setting so that they can be treated. The general inmate population is being treated, and I think, very humanely. Most of the same programs that we've had continue to go on. The correction officers put themselves in harm's way every day dealing with the population, and now they have to, be even more concerned about the potential spread of any virus. But if there's situations that require quarantine, we do them immediately, and we do them in a way that segments individuals. We have now in the prison 1,800 beds, and we have a population of prisoners. There's probably about 600 prisoners, if I had to give you a round guesstimate. So the lack of filled spaces allows for social distancing. You can put people in cells that are quite a bit of distance from other cells. And in doing it that way, you better protect the inmate population. We don't know how this contagion is going to continue, and we're worried about any institutional setting. A nursing home, an assisted living home, and a prison fits into the same category. But I think we've done so far what is prudent to this point, and we're prepared to take other measures should that contagion expand. So the reality is that we are still very much in the early stages of a crisis that is completely uncharted waters for us. You probably heard that phrase so much it's a cliche, where there's no roadmap for what we're doing here. We are trying to make intelligent decisions as the issues present themselves to us. And with the growth of the contagion, as we've described, how we went from 1 patient to 380 patients, now to 2,800 patients, we find ourselves having to constantly deal with some very incredible numbers of people. And with the economic shutdown of all of us, Westchester County and all of our surrounding areas, the terrible economic impacts for all. These are difficult days, and these are days when you have to look inward to determine whether or not we have, as individuals, much less as a society, the self-discipline and the ability to focus on facts that will get us through this. I've said it before, others now have said it as well, that this is a test for this generation. I'm a little old to be tested in this way at this stage of my life, but any of us who are alive right now, and we have to grasp that this is now a chance for us to show that we are our father's sons, our grandfather's sons, that we have the same ability to work through a very bad moment as they did, and each of them had their own challenges all throughout those days. In my faith tradition, being Christian, we are in the season of Lent. It is a season of contemplation and a season of repentance. And every one of us individually has to look inward in this period of time to try to understand what is it about our own behavior that has to be better and improve. Not to point out the other person's failings, but to look at our own failings and to try to be better and improve. What better way could we do that than to care about our fellow neighbor? What better way can we do that than to show the compassion for the senior citizen down the street and call them during the day and engage them on the phone so that they have some sense of activity? What better way than to be with the children who are home from school and are probably one part enjoying free time and second part overly concerned, very concerned about what is happening around them that they can't quite understand. So these are our chances to prove that there are good angels inside of each of us. And I'm confident, I'm very confident that the people of this country, the people of this state, and the people of this county have that sensibility. We are going to try to give you a government response that is intelligent, is reasoned, is measured. We're not here to spend money wildly, but we will not scrimp on dollars and cents when human lives are at stake. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in touch with you, we believe, tomorrow at 1 o'clock to give you some additional information. And we hope, as we all hope, that we'll get through this and we'll come through on the other side for a much better country and a much better county. Thank you.